live on everything. All right, thank you. Boyne, William, you know the drill. You're over here on Star Model. Raise your hand if you want to come up on stage or let me know in text chat and I'll bring you up. Everyone that's tuning in on LinkedIn, Twitch, YouTube, Facebook, yeah, use the text chat to ask any questions or share what you got going on, and then I'll pass that along to John to get advice, feedback, answers, insights. John, please introduce yourself and welcome.
Hey, thanks. Nice to be here. My name's John Grogan. Live in Westlake Village, and I've worked in startups for the past 10 years or so. Recently, been cooking up a new idea, which is, kind of evolving as I get it onto the road. But, really worked within fintech and financial services startups, usually within go-to-market. Essentially did the same job 6 times, which was working with a founder. They give you a blank Google sheet, and then paraphrasing, but they say, when can you close Walmart, essentially. So with varying degrees of success. So learn a few things, and at the moment trying to take that out on my own. So always around to kind of help people out who are very early, especially within B2B sales, where you might be very early in your journey and it seems daunting. You've got very structured sales process, large companies that, they, you feel that they may be taking a chance on you as a startup, but don't worry. I've seen it many times. Large companies do take chances, but I always here to help with anything like that if I can be useful. Anything sales related or founder related as well. Need a shoulder to bend on.
I love it.
What about?
Yeah. So it is kind of interesting. So you have been working on a new company and you've recently launched it. I'm curious, having a lot of experience and been around for a while now. What was the journey like launching this one versus earlier companies that you worked on? Like, what were the biggest lessons and bits of wisdom that you employed while you were working on this new one?
Um, I think the biggest, well, two things. I think it was exceptionally easier this time around. Um, I didn't bother incorporating or anything. I'm like, let me get close to some revenue and then I'll incorporate, when there's actually something to get incorporated, and that might not be to everyone's taste. But I remember last time I did a lot of like preamble and like padding out and stuff. And just with the tools that we have available today, I was able to stand up something that almost resembles, like a 5 or 6 person startup, the tools that they might have for, sales outbound, really easy and really simply, jamming a calendar and an outbound platform and a data provider, and get some emails stood up and deliverability metrics and someone to send your email for you and everything else. And it's like 2 or 3 plugins and you're off to the races. Then all you have to do is do the work. It's always the hardest part. But I think ultimately, and I definitely made the conscious decision this time around. You're like, I don't really know what this thing's going to be, but let's just take something out on the road, and as I'm doing it I can get feedback and we can refine it. And so over the past kind of got it stood up in August, and then built it in September, and then October I'm kind of like just getting it out on the road, talking to people, having meetings and refining it. At the moment it's ostensibly an annuity business for small business owners who really get left behind, I think, a lot. There's a problem that small business owners have. Sometimes they don't often know all of the retirement opportunities that are available to them. They feel like, oh, I've got a business, I have to have a 401k. Not necessarily. That can be expensive. It can come with a lot of testing, um, Department of Labor oversight as well, which you may not need. There's a lot more simpler options that might fit them better. And there's also opportunities to sock away a lot more tax-free cash. So, going out and helping small business owners see what's available to them, and then also talk to them about, like, a quote unquote personal pension via an annuity. But yeah, I mean, it's evolving daily. And it's almost already pointed away from that and just almost becoming a business services company for financial advisors and insurance agents. So it changed very quickly.
Yeah, I mean that's how it usually goes, and that's what you kind of went in knowing. Like, just let's just play around and see what the feedback is with real people. Um, Something that stands out that's really important is it was much easier this time, right? Like starting this
Massively.
new
Yeah.
business. I think this is something that earlier or less experienced founders, younger people especially, really need to understand. When they have these ambitions, these big ideas for, in their mind, a world changing, innovative company, oftentimes to achieve that, it requires a monumental amount of resources and relationships and influence and understanding of what's going on, not just in the market and the industry that you're after, but the complexities of operating a business and growing a business. And what happens is they rush to just build their idea because they feel that if they don't do it now, they'll never be able to do it. Someone else will do it. But as you've kind of like, touched on, having experience, having, worked in different careers, you know, started your own businesses in the past that are different. Now with this one, it was a much easier journey. It got to the market much faster, and you're able to have these different bits of accountability in place along the way. So I'm curious, for these less experienced people, younger people that are in a rush and they want to skip a lot of critical steps, thinking that that's the best way to be successful, what can you speak to in your experience that made this easier for you? That they can hone in on and build up as a resource when they have this grand ambition that they want to work towards, that is going to be in the back of their mind and they're going to eventually get to that.
Yeah, I mean, I would think, I would think about, when you think about like an MVP, think about like an MVC, like a minimum viable company. All you really need is the credibility to be who you say you are. If you call someone up, if you have an idea, you call up a potential customer and you pitch that idea to them, and they're like, "Oh, actually, that's a good idea." There may be a business there. You should make 100 other calls and talk to 100 other people, but you know, just spin up a website, hop on Squarespace or any, Card, even jump on Card, do a one pager, and, put your idea on there and set some meetings and talk to some people. And they'll tell you if, you're crazy. But sometimes if they tell you you're crazy, you might just be early. Uh, it's hard to tell. But, just I think that's I've definitely been in places where we spent so much time creating, building a product, getting the culture right, getting all the different dimensions of the product and the different capabilities of the product, and then you take it to market, and people are just like, nah, there's no way we'd buy this, and then you're like, oh, we've got problems. Our entire orientation, product roadmap is the buyers aren't really that jazzed about it. And in enterprise sales, it's hard to get buyers jazzed about much. A lot of it's timing, but I think depending on whatever your business is, I think that it's just another way to say it is it's just so much easier to test your hypothesis now uh, than it was before. And I think the most critical thing is if you can say talk to a dozen or 2 dozen potential customers for that idea, and they'll tell you in no short order if you're crazy, or you may have something, or if you're only mildly crazy.
With this, when you're talking about like reaching out to these customers, how important is it to have had that experience working in the industry in the market with other companies before moving on to this project? Were you leveraging those relationships, that influence you have on them, to be able to pick up the phone, like, call up people that you already have these connections with to get that feedback and insight from? Um, and yeah, how important is it to maintain those relationships from the early days until where you are today?
I think yes. I mean, if you're trying to work in an area where previously you have worked, and your idea is kind of in that area, then absolutely relationships are almost the longer they are, the more valuable they are. If someone's decided to stay in touch with you for 15 or 20 years, they're
Is it
they see your value, and or your sparkling charisma, one or the other. Um, But no, I mean, what I'm doing, I don't, I leverage the relationships, usually even just to bounce ideas off, you know, get a bit of feedback, orient yourself, maybe cut off some part of what you think might be a good offering. But I think, some of the shorthand that you pick up, or I picked up, is just, I think the biggest lesson, I think, is like, just go out there and try and book meetings and have conversations. You're never going to sell anything if you can't talk to a buyer. And they're like, okay, I see the value of this. You've demonstrated that clearly, and it doesn't seem too painful for me to make a change. Okay, there's a potential deal there. Until you get to that point, you're like, I would say, you should make sure that your ideas get abused, and the best way to do that is put them in front of other people who could potentially be a buyer of that idea. Um, because I think, there's always that tendency of like, oh, this is such a great idea. My family and friends have said it's great, and I've noodled on it. I've worked up this great notion on it, and I've look at these. I've got some product specs, and take it out there and get it abused. If you're really serious about trying to make it a viable company, I think.
I love it. So Boyne, William over here on Startmata, please do feel free to chime in, ask some questions, or let me know if you want to come up on stage. Everyone that's joined us since we started over on LinkedIn, Twitch, and YouTube, Facebook as well, please don't be shy. Post your questions or just share what you got going on, and we can dig into it and try to highlight different areas that you may not realize are potential, pitfalls or challenges that you will be faced with, or kind of like, yeah, dig into the context of how you got to where you are right now with your project and what's up next. Boyne often has, been member of the community, has a great company, small business. Thinking of him and businesses like his that are established with a good clientele, what could you suggest in regards to getting a deeper understanding of your clients, your customers, and leveraging that information to serve them better, either by offering new services or a new product line? What sort of methodology do you use to understand the target customer profile that you have and better serve them?
Is that a question for me or Boyan?
Yeah, for you. Yeah,
Oh, good.
yeah. I'm
Okay.
tossing it. Yeah, it's your way. I'm using Boyne as a wonderful example uh, of a typical established small medium business in the community that is looking to expand on the revenue streams, either again through improving the existing product or uh, introducing new ones, or also expanding like who that customer profile could be next based on the existing ones you have.
Yeah, I don't know. That's quite a serendipitous question, actually. I mean, that's really where the focus of my business is shifting towards. Where I started off going like, "Hey, I reckon that small businesses are underserved for some financial service," but ultimately, you know, there's a lot of people out there selling financial services to business owners. You're one of thousands. So I'm like, look, what are the things that people don't want to do? What are the demographic trends that are happening around us? Um, people have less time because they're more bombarded. Usual channels of information don't work, or mediums of sales don't work, and you see it from every salesperson on LinkedIn. I think there was a watershed moment in January 2023 where all company budgets just dried up outside of paying for healthcare inflation, healthcare premium inflation. Certainly was the feedback I got all that year. Funnily enough, it tied in with around, I think it was December 20th, 2022, ChatGPT's public um, version was launched, and job listings just fell off a cliff. Layoffs started, supposedly for AI, but we may or may not have been in a recession at some point. I was like, look, life has definitely changed, and it's going to continue to change. I think we don't know how long that. I think things are going to look radically different in 5 years, and then radically different from that in 10 years. But one things we are starting to see the beginning of now is people want more business. It's impossible to be heard on social media. It's impossible to use email as a functioning tool the way that maybe it was useful 10 years ago. Use even LinkedIn or something like that, the amount, even, spam calls. So there's a lot of an absence of human touch, and people are deluged and bombarded, and they have less use of their time. And I think, when you look at, I hear salespeople on LinkedIn, they all say the same thing. It's very, very hard to connect. So with a business like Boyan's, I would maybe go to Boyan and say, hey, look, what Pelican does is we can talk to your client base like as a human. We'll call them up and have conversations with them, understand where they are, where they are in, pricing the value of your product, asking them if they know about some recent promotion or a new add-on to the product that might be good for them. And if so, setting up an appointment with Boyan to chat through it and see if there might be a sale there. Of course, Boyan's very busy. He's running his business. He certainly doesn't want to make 100, 150 dials a day to find that out from his client base. But he's got these thousands of people or hundreds of people on his client books that they're just sitting there. And he's like, oh my God, I know there's revenue in here. It's just hard for me to get to it, which is really frustrating. So that's what Pelican is pointing towards doing, is to really helping business owners uncover the revenue that they just don't have time to get to, and doing it in a human way. So kind of in a world that's shifting towards less human touch, to bring that human touch back to their business to help them differentiate, open up their client books, all their prospect lists, and get some meaningful engagement, or at least discovery, or promotion of a recent event or product update. Get people in the door and ultimately help them out get revenue. So yeah, so I went, so that in a nutshell, honestly, within the space of a month, I've gone from, hey, I'm going to sell annuities to small business owners to doing this. It's literally this week. But I'm like, look, I think when I think a good idea, if you're trying to do what a lot of other people are doing, it's just going to be, I don't know who said this, somebody, some talking head. I was, they're like, look, if you like competition, open a restaurant, in Chicago, there's all the competition you want. But if you're going out and trying to ape somebody, you say, oh, that's a good idea, I could do that. You have to have some spin on it, or you have to differentiate. I think if you go out there and try and do something a lot of people are doing, you're kind of setting yourself, because today it's harder than ever to get a community, a volume on social media, kind of your track record. So you have to attack through a medium where it's easier to get that kind of foothold and do it. I think you using the phone is good because, one, I mean, I've got a good background in it, but also people don't want to pick up the phone. And I see a lot of feedback. Let's call it feedback. It's the nice way to say it. But like stuff on the homepage, on LinkedIn, on the feed, it's salespeople just whining about our SDRs won't pick up the phone, and they're not good when they do, and the quality of their phone calls, and the amount of meetings they book, we can't get the right number. Some of that is technique, some of it's talent, but ultimately it still remains the highest yielding channel for that. And I think a bit more, if you could spoof a small business owner's phone number and everything, and they're like, oh, I recognize this number, it's not somebody pretending to be from Coinbase telling me that I've just been cleared out, or Google calling me. If Google calling me again, better pick up. You've got a good choice of picking up and having a human conversation, and if they are our existing client as well, they're like, yeah, we bought that product once, we are interested to hear what's new with it. There's a promotion about something that we tangentially use or we use in our day-to-day lives. I'm definitely interested in having that convo, at least connecting with Boyan to find out what's up. So anyway, it's a long way of going.
Yeah, no, but it's really
You can't
important.
pivot unless you're on the road. You got to
Yeah,
get on the road, and then you can kind of
yeah. What's important too is that like you're calling attention to the overwhelming torrent of AI slop, and this comes up often now in these conversations with mentors, because yeah, everyone's being bombarded, and the more human interaction you can uh, uh, have with people, the more likely you are to build an actual relationship with them and build that trust and build a community around your brand, your product, your service, because you're having a real connection with them. And yeah, what we also love doing with all of this is trying to facilitate non-transactional engagements with people, right? So you can get to know each other as neighbors first, and really, have an endearment towards another person where you want to see them succeed. You want to work with them. You want to spend time with them, right? So these are all really important things, and then it's just a matter of, yeah, how can we design marketing campaigns and funnels that are leaning into that, the human connection, which is really great. We got a question over from Michael Manahan on LinkedIn. I'm developed. I've developed a unique methodology to bring aerospace quality software processes to consumer software like mobile, game, and web development. I'm currently at an aerospace company and I want to do this full time because I've used this technique or this unique methodology to bring not just quality, maintainable, scalable software, but at 100 times the normal development speed for some big software projects I have on the side. It's rare for someone aerospace, embedded, mobile, game, web, AI development experience, and I think I have something really valuable here. I've always had a day job and I have 4 kids, but I want to find a way to quit in the next 6 months and do consulting. But I don't know how to get started. So yeah, this is kind of interesting. You've got a consulting background as well, some advisory work. What advice and guidance can you provide?
Yeah, as briefly as possible, just start consulting. I know it's if you're sounds like you've got a family and a full-time job, so you got like three full-time jobs really. But if you can, think of the smallest version of your consulting offering that you can kind of package up and just package it up and take on one client that you see as kind of your ideal customer profile for what you're offering. Try and build a list. Honestly, the key is the list is the way to win, honestly, in sales. There's been a trend in sales as data providers have cropped up more and more, and they're like, the bigger the list, the bigger. It's not. It's really that's almost how you fail. Take time, hand build a list using your own expertise, and drill down very tightly into like who would be the most highest likely user of this idea that I have, and make a very, very fairly short curated list, and make sure you have all their contact details. Be relentless with them, set that meeting, have that conversation, see if they're open to having that consulting, and just start with one. Don't overburden yourself, and even adding that one might be an overburden at the beginning, but then if it goes well, I think hopefully that should give you the kind of buoyancy to be like, well, maybe let's do another one. And then there's maybe like, okay, well, look, how easy was it to get that 1 and 2? How many do I need to call this W2 a day? And then you can probably time it, say within 90 days. So I need 5 of these to quit my day job. So you're like, I managed to get these 2 in 2 months. What's that? What's that? 2.5 months. So you can say within 90 days, especially if I'm not working my W2. I did 2 in a month with my W2. 90 days, I can get 5 plus the 2 I have. You're going to be fine. Just as easy as that, right? But kind of broadly, I would say broadly the thing, just tiptoe into it, start the consultant agreement, find out where all the mistakes and the pitfalls are, and then reorient your offering based on that. Do the feedback from your consulting client, but like, have kind of fairly candid and ruthless feedback sessions and like, hey, we've had an engagement, it's been 60 days, what's worked, what hasn't, what would make you extend it, what worries you, what might make you kind of curtail the assignment. And that can be your initial template, and then you can kind of spread that out. But I would say, yeah, like keep banging that gong of like, start very small, but again, before starting, make sure that list is really, really high quality. That's not just like, hey, these companies doing this thing in California. Like, no, maybe start local. And I say that so maybe you could hop in a car, grab a coffee with somebody if they are open to it, and so that the list is small. It's better to have those high quality conversations than a ton of poor quality conversations. Again, people just don't have the time. They'll forget about you.
Yeah, that's where a lot of people go wrong is thinking that high volume, high numbers is where they're gonna win and find success. Just bombarding as many people as quickly as possible, and that's where again going back to the AI slop, it goes so wrong. It's devaluing your brand. It's burning bridges, making people really irritated that they're getting an email or a message from you because it's so untargeted. And you can speak to this more, but every moment, every resource spent on someone that's not within that target customer profile, or at least one of the target customer profiles that you're testing that you believe might be the one, like you said, that it's going to be essentially, like, to reiterate, the most likely to be excited to learn about your offering, get the most enjoyment from using, your service or your product, get the most benefits or easier access to the benefits, and thus find the most value in it. If you're targeting people who don't fall within those groups, you're just wasting time, energy, capital, while also devaluing your brand in front of these people because you're just spamming them and being an annoyance. So I'm curious,
Very much.
because this comes up a lot, and it's certainly come up like multiple times in this conversation with you. How would you recommend defining those lists? Those target customer profiles. Like what, like demographics are something that a lot of people focus on, but in my opinion, in talking to lots of mentors like yourself and others, psychographics is where it really matters, right? And psychographics is what the behaviors are and the motivations behind those behaviors, right? So how would you recommend someone put together a target customer profile and then create a list around that?
Yeah, that's well said. I mean, you just want to meld the two of them, really. You want to, like, you can start from a demographic, if you have a broad understanding. Hey, this job type or this type of company selling this service at this level of revenue in this area. But then you need to go a level deeper, and you have to kind of analyze, your, if you haven't started yet, at least kind of try and think it out in the theater of your mind. What might a sale look like? What would be the triggers? What are the emotional underpinnings that would get someone to make a decision? How would I create the urgency? What is it in their life that's going wrong that this product would come in and solve? And how powerfully would that happen? And so you have to almost, you can start with a demographic list, but then you have to get that level deeper. And oftentimes it's intuition, and that's where your industry experience is from. And forgive me, I don't know too much about aerospace software, but you would know from, we'll use this as the example, whatever your industry is, but if it's aerospace software and you've been working in aerospace, there's things that almost nobody else knows, or very few people know. And you'll know about whether it be a project you've worked on, what are the headwinds that people have, what are the things that prevent them from doing something, what are the complaints that people have. So you could even say, when you do that demographic, you may see many people in that list that you're like, I know for a fact that this person at this company has that issue, and you've got the ability to go in there and say, I know that this exists here, or that this problem. But yeah, I mean, if you can blend the emotional and the motivational underpinning and go there first, um, always go for the lowest hanging fruit. um, the things intuitively and objectively that you'll be able to help, because you go from the lowest hanging fruit. You've got some revenue coming in. You can use those as reference clients and also get referrals. Hopefully, if your products are working away. But yeah, it's really that. I'd say that the note on the demographic aspect of it would just don't go too wide. You know, use every filter that you can, whatever database you're looking at. Um, there's some wild filters in there. I use kind of like pension plan returns for small businesses, because I know they're of a certain scale that they have a pension plan or 401k, so that it's not, they're not just selling cupcakes at the farmers market, and nothing wrong with that. But I know that they've got a certain amount of revenue where they've got a few employees and they put a retirement plan in place. They may have a need, and they understand the retirement question because they manage the plan. Their name's on the return, so you can talk to them about that, and talk to them about alternatives based on how the plans are performing. But yeah, don't go too wide demographically. Use all the filters, but then use your own intuition. You have tons. You have way more than you believe you might do at first blush. But if you really sit there and you look at that list, once you've narrowed it down, you're like, what do I know about this company that maybe other people don't know? And get that in there, and then you kind of reorder it a bit. Probably going to have a really, really killer list to go and attack, to kick off with.
Yeah, I love it. This is good. We have another question coming from you too, from KP. KP Developer asks, for a first time founder, what's the advice on meeting and approaching angel pre-seed investors?
Well, I've got less experience on this kind of thing. Kind of businesses that I started tend to stand them up myself, and startups that I've worked at the kind of angel seed and Series A and B stage, but I've always been kind of in support of that, or generating pipeline. But I think now more than ever, there's so many resources to get those lists very, very easily to get online. And I think going back to what we just talked about, I think you approach, you want to go where your message is going to go and land um, most forcefully. So make sure you can get lists of every angel investor in a certain type of product area or discipline or funding amount, and you go and attack them and spam them, and it's going to hurt you. Or you can make that list short, go and look at their backgrounds, do some study, do that detailed work, and then go and approach them with a detailed message related to other things they've invested in, stuff about their personal. I think going in and being just applying. Obviously, I always look through this lens, but apply some sales principles to the approach, because really, I mean, it's just another sales funnel. You're going to someone to sell an idea or to sell a part of your company or part of your vision to somebody with a problem. They need to deploy capital. So make sure that you have detailed notes in your outreach, and be relentless as well. Show them that you're the kind of founder who doesn't give up. I'm sure that they get plenty of decks just dropped on them with no follow-up or some automated follow-up, and just don't be that person. Call them up, get them out, get in front of them, but make sure that you're only calling up the ones that, yes, they're definitely in your product area, yes, they've got experience in kind of making investments in your area, and they have some kind of understanding, or there's some other kind of affinity there, their background, I think where they went to school, and who they know. It's a little played out. I think you should look at them, trying to dig into that. You'll see it's very easy. They're very open on LinkedIn, and you can kind of see what they're into and what their interests are, and tie that message and bring it into your messaging. But yeah, create a funnel, but a small one. But yeah, try and get in front of them before you deluge them with anything.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great advice. Building on that, um, with the standing out aspect of it and getting to know them, the best thing you can do is not pitch them. It's reach out to them as mentors without asking them to be your mentor, but connecting that relevancy to an aspect of what you're challenged with and how you fit, how you think they could be a good fit as not only an investor but an advisor, because of that background experience, because of those portfolio companies, because of those connections. So you can reach out to them and be like, hey, really admire your work with this project and what you've done. I'm working on this. Um, I've been asking a couple of our, like our mentors about, how we could accomplish this. And I saw you did that. I would love to, hear your feedback on this, get your, advice on this. Can I take you out to coffee for 20 minutes? Right? Something real simple that's not a big ask of them, but it's coming from a different angle. Again, it's not transactional. It's this mentor-mentee relationship, and it gives you an opportunity, both of you, an opportunity to vet each other as business partners working together, while also giving them a little bit of empowerment beyond just being able to cut a check, making them feel empowered through their background experience, their interests, their expertise, their skill set, these other elements of who they are and what they've worked towards and what they've built. So hopefully that would also help, with this. But yeah, absolutely, you want to take the time, like John said, to do the research, dig into, like, if it's a VC, what's their investment thesis? If it's an angel, they might not have that publicly, shared, but you can ask them, you can learn about them, you can look at what they invest in and try to be like, hey, I saw you invest in this, it's really interesting. I'd love to know, like, what drove that. Like, those are easy conversations to have, which are interesting, which make it more about them and less about you. But at the same time, you're hopefully fostering an authentic relationship with this person, endearing yourself to them, and building a rapport where, even if they don't see you as a good investment for them, maybe it's just a mismatch, maybe it's a conflict of interest they see, they still like you. There's a good chance that they'll introduce you or share references or recommendations of who else you could reach out to. So that's the kind of like the bigger goal for all of this, is building authentic relationships for sure. Yeah, but that's great, John. Yeah, so we got some new people jumping over on YouTube and Twitch. LinkedIn as well. So welcome. Please use the text chat to ask any questions or share what you have, what you're working on or trying to do, and we'll do our best to get John to answer some questions, share some feedback, insights, and advice to help you get to your goals. While we wait for some more questions, John, I'm curious. A lot of companies, well, your background's finance and sales and a couple other like, really important operational areas of business. A lot of these areas are where founders, operators go wrong because they're skipping critical steps before they move on to the next stage. What are some of the most glaring pitfalls that you see people fall into that you would recommend to slow down and put a little more emphasis on? Whether that's like, earlier stage, like, a company that's just getting their seed funding or working towards that, or someone that's a little bit later stage established like SMB that is trying to get to the next stage of their life cycle. Yeah.
I don't know. I think one thing that really sticks out is just employee experience. Even if you're hiring your first employee, you've got to almost approach it as if you already have 5 or 10, and I, I'm sure many people at many startups will be able to say, like, there was no onboarding, or their onboarding was, there was a T-shirt and a mug on their desk, and then they were like, go to it, and some people, I personally, I don't have a problem with that. I'm like, yeah, that's fine. I know what I'm doing, kind of thing. But I think people, and definitely that's kind of, for salespeople that might be okay, maybe not anymore. But everyone's different, and I think that, if you can show even your first employee on the first day that you've taken a lot of time thinking about what their experience will be the first time they sit at their desk, first time they go to lunch, first time they wrap up their day, the end of their first week, the end of their first month, that you have a process, that you have everything in place, they have options about benefits, you are a good resource, that when they come to you and ask you about, like, what about, the health benefits, you're like, I don't, have an answer. Take some time to talk with the vendors you may have in place or just put in place when you're hiring employees, to know, not just like, yeah, we got some health insurance, it's in place, they can go here. Like, no, take an hour with the vendor and be like, what are the key questions that most employees have when they come in? How do I answer them? Who do I refer them to? What are some of the easy answers? But yeah, I think, and if you have that process built out for employee number one, it's easier to refine, it's easier to build on it by the time you're hitting, like, you don't want to be like, 10 employees, 15 employees in. And it's always very easy to do, you're like struggling on some seed money, you get a Series A, and you're like, oh, if we go just make hiring the priority. You got to make sure that those people are, the hiring process is good, and the handover is good. But also, once they land on their first day, that they're like, okay, you don't want employees coming in and being like, oh, what have I done? This is like unorganized, and it's good. Startups are a little bit disorganized. I don't think they should be too organized. It's another topic. But I think, when it comes to employee experience, and because, hey, someone's taken a chance on you and your company, they've bought into your dream, your vision. Um, you want to make sure you make sure that they've made a good decision. And it's a very, very small amount of investment of your time. And really, you're setting the stage for hopefully what's going to be, dozens, hundreds, even more hires. You never know. But have a process before the first one lands. That's a good one.
This is really important, and it kind of brings up another set of guidelines I think that every founder, every manager, leader should be aware of. And that's everything results in an experience for every stakeholder, right? Employees, you want to make sure they're having a great experience working for you. Business partners, you want to make sure they're having a great experience working with you. Your customers, you want to make sure they're having a great experience with any touch point with your company, whether that's, going to your landing page, talking to customer support, if you have a brick and mortar store, right, walking in, just getting those vibes of the place that is representing your brand and, connecting with them. So if you take that same approach and ask those questions, what's most likely to give them a great experience? What's likely to make them feel confused or frustrated, or, like they can't trust this, right? Like you'll be able to get ahead of so many of these things and deliver something that people resonate with, they're excited by, and they want to support. And when it comes to startups, you want to be good enough. You don't need to be perfect, and you'll never ever be perfect in most cases, right? So just work towards good enough and exercise some transparency so people understand what expectations are reasonable for where you are at what stage you're at, and deliver on what is necessary to, again, make sure they're having a good time with whatever it is that you're doing. We have a question from NASA over on, or NASA, excuse me if I say it wrong, on YouTube. Question: what are your views on onboarding interested businesses onto a waiting list as a means to achieve a valuation as opposed to the MVP route? This can go into a couple different areas. John, feel free to share your insights on this one.
Yeah, as long as I think, I've seen this quite recently with the company working with. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. But I think that you also have to have some. There's going to be a second question, which is going to be how likely is this waiting list actually going to be, a real customer. You get, as like anything in business, you're going to get a lot of tire kickers. You're like, when you say, "Hey, I have a shiny new thing. It's going to be amazing." People are like, "Okay, here's my email." And, that doesn't equate into, yes, I'm going to go and be free, then a paid user or whatever. So I think that you have to have a meaningful follow-up answer to that question, how many of these are going to convert, that's based in something, um, either something you've seen in the past or something that you've got internally. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you don't have anything to kind of hold them, and you just like, people are like, "Hey, this idea is strong enough, I bought in," and those numbers are kind of healthy looking, yeah. But yeah, just have something in the tank to bat that next question off about conversion.
Yeah, I'll expand on this a little bit too. It's when you're building an MVP and you're following lean methodology, you should be doing this before you build anything, before you go the MVP route, or it should be part of the MVP route. Um, this comes up a lot too with other mentors. You would design a fake door test. You create a landing page as if your product's available and ready. The way that I like handling it, so you kind of manage expectations, is at the top of your landing page it says early access window closing soon. So they know that they might not get this, right? Then when they get to the checkout page, that's when you present them with a notice that the early access window closed. Would you like to join the waitlist? So what you're doing is you're running a validation test, a product validation test, to see if anyone's willing to try to give you money for your product, right? When they try to do that, then you allow them to join the waitlist. You don't let anyone join the waitlist until they get to that point. This allows you to kind of gatekeep that and qualify people, at least more qualified than anyone just joining willy-nilly. Like, John pointed out, anyone could just be like, "Oh, I have FOMO. I don't know what this is, but I'm going to sign up for this," right? So it gives you a better quality of list on those that sign up. And then you would use that to see, right, like, oh, is this worth building or whatever else. But then it also, if you're trying to leverage the wait list itself to raise funding, set a valuation for all this, at least you can say, oh, we qualify these people first. They had to go through these hoops. They tried to buy this as part of a fake door test, and that's how they ended up joining this. So that all of a sudden holds a lot more value to whoever you're pitching this to. But it should hold value to yourself as well before you move on to the next stage where you start building stuff. Yeah. Yeah, awesome. I'm glad that was helpful. Yeah, please keep asking questions, people. This is awesome. We have a few minutes left, so last call for questions. John, is there anything that has not come up yet that you'd like to touch on and throw out there for people?
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, my main thing since the last time I did this was really, I've got a friend who he works for a very very large org as the kind of subject matter expert for AI. And he's been in it. He's kind of a like video content creator, and he said, look, two things have become apparent to me. He goes, one, within a year, 18 months, my job's gone. AI can do my job. I was like, that's very objective of you. But he said, number two is just, I think that, longer term, everyone's looking at a business being a business of one, and you need to be good at doing that. And I think even every AI prognosticator that's out there, certainly within sales, I'm sure everything else, everything goes back to relationship, which I think has come up a few times in this. So I think always, I think, it's something to just keep in your thinking, as you do product development and outreach and everything else is, how does relationship stay central? How is it the main kind of, leverage within the business, and how do we raise that up as the key value?
I like that. That also makes me want to go back to what you were sharing about being a little bit relentless as a founder, trying to connect with investors.
A little
Um,
bit,
yeah, but
a lot.
yeah, but the way to do that that I think is best, and it's kind of it's been touched on here, is you give these updates and you share your progress and you let people know that you're not waiting around for them. You're someone that gets things done, and I think that's the biggest challenge for founders is getting things done. So many entrepreneurs are just entrepreneurs because they're just sitting around waiting for other people to come on board and help them versus just getting whatever they can get done within their capacity, their limitations to make progress happen. And that is going to draw people to you. It's an energy that people admire and respect. And if you're able to just get anything done and share that, it's gonna yeah hopefully get people to want to follow along and get more interest and see what happens next. And then they start to think of how they can fit in and play a role in whatever the next chapter is. And with that too, it's on the transparency side, it's also beneficial to share some of the adversity that you're facing and how you've overcome that, right? So yeah, storytelling, like you said, John, like pitching to investors, it's a persuasive story. You're telling a story, you're trying to get these people to, buy what you're selling them. And you're selling part of your business, right? So yeah, this is really important stuff. Um, yeah, let me see what's going on. Chats. Okay. All right. Awesome. NASA to help you. Wonderful. Yeah, we're just coming up on time. All right. So if no one else has a final question, I'll ask one. So we went over like yeah the customer profiles and trying to figure that out. Um, when it comes to like your friend saying that AI is going to replace their job, right? Like you're talking about relationships, but when you're telling your story, what helps you do the research and understand what's going to be most likely to be exciting to that specific customer, investor, uh, whoever it is, strategic partner, to get them more likely to be persuaded by what you're trying to, convince them of, whether again it's, being an investor, coming on board for anything else.
Yeah, I think if you, I think any kind of success, you've got to have some kind of event happening in clusters, and people tend to act like each other in certain situations. So to bring it back to the beginning and close the loop really, and make a nice circle of this hour, is you know really go out and talk to people. You have to, I think you have to constantly not undermine yourself, but constantly question yourself. There's a big saying in sales about assumption, you know, being the mother of something. But assuming things is really you're removing yourself from opportunity. So I think the more you assume stuff, the more you stay cloistered within either your co-founders or your investors. You know, make the potential buyers or the potential users of your product key from as quickly as possible. Um, it's going to have a big impact. Take away, some of your assumptions, and some of those assumptions may be your biggest assumption. And it's better that kind of earlier on than spending a long time in development and finally launching something and finding out one of your biggest assumptions is actually not that strong or utterly incorrect. And it really hurts. Better to hear it when you're early on the road than hear it when you've after building something. I mean, try and cause yourself as little pain as possible, and you can do it for free just by talking to people. So yeah, make sure that the user is part of the product dev group.
I think that's great advice for every aspect of life. Just
Yeah,
being as quick as you can to put yourself in that position of vulnerability and discomfort to test, see if your assumptions right. Like you can do that with like so many different areas of your life, with relationships, friendships, romantic, connections. Those ones are the ones where I see people go the most, where they're putting off a very critical aspect of having a healthy relationship with someone until, yeah, they've been dating for like 6 months, and then all of a sudden they're like, oh wait, you don't want to have kids, I want to have kids. How do we miss this? Right? It's like, well, we both were afraid to talk about that openly with each other until this point, when it's like, oh, okay, you just wasted so much time with this. But yeah, it's like that for business too, and all these different things. So I think that's a really, really shining bit of wisdom that you just dropped on people. Okay, we're up on time, John. You've been amazing. You're always great. I will
Good deal.
see you soon. Is there anything in the community you want to announce other than like, yeah, your new business? There's a time to plug it if you want to drop like, yeah, name, URL. I'll share that too.
Yeah, I was going to say, well, I'd say thinkpelican.com, but you'll see the copy needs updating as I'm working on that. It'll probably be refreshed, but don't worry. But yeah, I mean, if you're a business owner that struggles with that problem, hey, I've got this huge client list. If only I had the time or the bandwidth to approach them in a professional way over the phone, but do it cheaply without making a hire, drop me a note at thinkpelican.com. And yeah, come along to the Edify Startups lunch next week and uh, have some ribs and mash and whatever else they got on offer as time for it. But yeah, looking forward to
Award-winning mac and cheese. Don't forget, that's Paul Schrader's favorite. Awesome, Boyne. It was great, William. It was great. Thank you so much for the questions, Michael, Nasa, and Kepe. Yes, and Surin Fus. Funny Twitch names, man. Yeah, thank you too for being a part of this and watching. All right, take care, everyone. Take care, John. See you soon. You're the best.
that. Right. Have a killer weekend.
Yeah.